What's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. And this week we're going to be focusing on variables. So last week we made this hello world text, or our text that changes to hello world when we click the button. And this week we're going to be looking at how variables work. So we're going to change this text to our different variables. Alright, so let's get into the video. Go ahead and subscribe for more great videos like this one. So first things first, let us click on our code. So this is what we wrote last week, and if you didn't get it, don't worry, you will get it as time goes by. So first things first, we're going to look at what variables are. So the definition of a variable, it's something that can change, it's changeable. So how you can see a variable is basically, think of it as a container. So in this container, you want to tell it exactly what goes in there. But each variable has a certain type. So if you have in your container an apple, for example, nothing else can go into that container except for an apple. If you have a container called banana, then only bananas are allowed going into that container. So that's the basics of what a variable is. So now we are going to look at the different types of variables that we can use. Forward slashes. Now these two forward slashes, if you type them in, they allow for comments to happen. So you can literally type in anything here and it will work. Not work, but I mean it will be a comment. So what we're going to type in here is components, because that is what this is right here. It is a text component, but we'll get to that in a different video. Today we just want to focus on variables. So we're going to type variables in there. Okay, so now underneath here we're going to have all our variables. So there are 6 main, let me just put my comments in. There are 6 main types of variables. Alright, so our first type is an integer. So an integer is a number without any decimals. So here we say what this name should be. So our integer, we're going to call it integer 1. So this is now the name. So we've created this box. So our container is now called integer, and it is of type int. Okay, so that basically means if int was apple, as an example, only apples are allowed in this box. So only integers are allowed in here. So we're going to just make it 1. So now this is our value that we're putting inside of our container. Okay, so now I'm just going to tab a few times here, and I'm just going to write here, integers are numbers without decimals. Okay, so now let's go to the second one. And our second one is a double. So we're going to call it decimal 1 because that is exactly what a double is. So our type is double, and our decimal is, well, decimal 1 is our container. And here we can put in 0.1 because we can allow for decimals. Alright, so let's tab that a few times, and let's say doubles are numbers with decimals. Alright, so int without, double with. Okay, then we have float. So we're going to call this floating point 1. And this one, I'm going to type in 0.1. And you will see that there is a red underlining there, which means it's wrong. So we need to put an F in there. Remember the F. If you don't put the F, it won't work. So what are floats? So floating points are not exact numbers. They are pretty much the closest you can get to a specific point, but it does not have to be an integer or a decimal. So where do we use floats? You usually use them in, like, game design uses them a lot. Why? Because you need to know exactly where a position is. So when you're transitioning from one point to another, if you use an integer, and you say move from point 1 to 2, it will just jump to that point. If you use decimals, it would look like it's like frame dropping. If you use floating point, the number can change a lot. So a floating point number might look something like this. So for 0.1f, it would look something like that. All right, so a normal decimal will be 0.1, and it would be 0 or 1 in this case for integers. So that is what a floating point looks like. Okay, so our definition for that, let's say floats are not exact numbers, and we'll say they're plus minus points. Okay, so now our next one is a string. So string, we're going to call it some text, and we're going to just say have these inverted commas. So these two inverted commas, this is how you define a string, and you can type anything on the inside. So we're going to type in hello world in here, and we can put a little smiley face. Okay, cool. So what is a string? A string is basically text. It is nothing other, it is just text. So you can put anything in there. You can put a number, so you can put in 120, but here's the thing with strings. That 120 is not actually a number, it is a text reference. So it is not actually an integer, a double, or a float. It is a string. So you cannot add two numbers together like that, for example, because it won't work. It will print out 120 plus 4. It won't actually say 124. Okay, so we're going to leave this at hello world with our little smiley face. And our definition is any form of text. Okay, then we have a char. We're going to call this some letter. And we are going to just put in A. Let's put in A. Okay, so it's underlined. As you can see, because we're using inverted commas, these need to be single quotations, not double. Okay, so what is a char? It is a character. So it's always only one single character. It can never be more. So if you try put AD, it won't work because then it becomes a string. So then you need to use the string. All right. So what can we write here? We'll just say any letter, or yeah, let's just say any letter. Well, actually all character, because you can even put @ in there if you want, anything like that. All right, so the last one we have is bool, which is boolean, and we're just going to call it yes, no. We're going to set it to false. Okay, so what is a boolean? A boolean is either true or false. There's nothing else. It can only be yes or no. All right, so there we have it. So we're going to say boolean only true or false. There we go. And remember, at the end of every single line, you have to put the semicolon. This is like a full stop in a sentence. It just tells the line of code to stop there, run the code, and then run to the next line or wherever it needs to go. So, to recap, the right-hand side goes into the left-hand side. And the left-hand side is defined by the name and the type of what needs to go in there. All right, so that's basically your 6 different variables. We have our change text component button here. All right, so when we click that, we want to change this text. Last time we made it say hello world. Now we want to put one of our variables in there. Okay, so now we can reference the first one. So let's say integer 1. Okay, so now you'll see it is underlined. Why is it underlined? It doesn't make sense. It's right there. Okay, it's simple. Text as a component over here is only string. So you output strings to the user. So when you want to do that, you're going to say, wait, okay, so must I make a string component? No, you don't have to. All you can do is you just put a plus there, and then you can put 2 inverted commas. That will automatically change it into a string. All right, so now that we did that, there's no errors anywhere. So now we can go to our game or our scene, and we can just hit play. And now if we say change text, that won't be hello world anymore. This will just be the number 1. And there we go. All right, so if we stop that and we go back into our code, so now we can put a double in here. Let's put our decimal 1. So decimal 1. So now it should say 0.1. So when we hit play, there we go. It says 0.1. And if we go back to our code, so floating point, yeah, it's all going to work the same. So now I want to get to the string. So we're going to say some text. So as you can see, some text does not need the inverted commas. Why not? Because it is already a string. Okay, so our some text, if we hit play now, and there we go. It says hello world. Cool. All right, so let's try our character. So some letter. Okay, but now we have an issue again because this is a character. So again, we need to put our inverted commas. And same thing for our boolean. So if we say yes, no in there, it's going to give the same issue. We need the inverted commas. So as you can see, the only one that does not need those inverted commas is the string. So some text. Okay, so now you know how variables are defined or started as such or written down to begin with. And next week we will be looking at the second part of variables, how to change these variables, because that is a lesson on its own. So I will see you next week and have an awesome week. And thank you so much to all our new subscribers. I really hope you guys are enjoying this. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.